We're an industrial coatings applicator. I've been in the paint business for 23 years now. Started when I was 17. Just turned 41, so I guess now it's 24 years. And it's been a real pleasure. I've worked on the coatings manufacturing side, on the engineering specification side, and then I went into the operations and sales side of the business. I'm a level 3 NACE inspector as well.
Very good. And also joining is James Stobaugh from B&N Inspection. James, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm James Stobaugh, protective coating specialist and technical quality manager for B&N, a QP5 certified inspection firm through AMPP. I started in 2008 and doing inspections, and have been working my way up through the industry since. I am a CP1 coatings technician and AMPP senior certified coatings inspector.
Very good. And not last, but Brunno Batista. Brunno, if you want to cover who you are.
You saved the last for the best? Is that what it is?
That's it. Best for the last.
There
Last for best.
Well, I've been in the roofing industry since I was 14 years old as a roofer, third generation roofing, and working for manufacturers, for many years, coatings. So I've been doing this my entire life. I don't know what to do, what to do anymore. Try to get out of the roofing industry, but I can't. So I'm married with.
And Brunno has very extensive background in roof coatings, very strong supporter of roof coatings, and also I will definitely say he's as he says there, worldwide brand ambassador and social media influencer. You can find him on all different platforms, and really entertaining posts that he does. So I'm glad to have you tonight, Brunno.
Thank you, my friend.
So let's kick this off, talk about successful relationships are very dependent upon effective communications between all involved parties. And this really comes to play when you have a protective coatings project. Really any type of industrial project that you're working on, you have to have a strong relationship with all the involved parties. And as I mentioned earlier, that's going to be your contractors, the owners, the inspection firms, and also to the coating manufacturers or the product suppliers and manufacturers as well. Now, an owner's expectation, they all have this top of the pyramid type of demand that they're looking for. They want to have their project, they want an effective coating system that's going to be installed in a cost-effective manner, that's going to achieve the long-term, whatever they're looking to, what their long-term goals are. They want it to come in budget, and they want it to be done on time. Now that's the ideal, what they're looking for. But in reality, sometimes those things don't always work out. So tonight what we really want to talk about as a group is the importance of having, it could be anything from the pre-project meeting or importantly the pre-work, the pre-job conference that's done, and also communication plans. I want to open this up with Sam. Sam, you is representing contractors. When you're looking at owners' expectations and they're looking for this expectation, what sometimes is a reality?
Well, so I think that before we hold any form of pre-job meeting or anything like that, two things are really important. It's vital that you get your eyes on the project if possible, so you can go out there and look around the facility where you're working at. Is there going to be any obstacles there? Do we have, structures that are in the way of it? What are the containment requirements of the facility? Getting all these questions that you may have, but also going through the scope of work and the spec to make sure that this isn't another one of the copy and paste specifications that's been put out so many times. Like, here now is there's so many repeat coding systems that a lot of coding systems don't even exist anymore, and they're still putting them out there. And that's simply just not being updated on the specification side of it. But if you get all your questions ahead of time, then try to get them answered with your contacts before you do this pre-job. That way, when you go into the pre-job, they're not having to go back and set follow-up meetings to get these answers. I've always found that is a good way to kick the meetings off and kick the job off on the right foot, because they know that you've done your homework with each project.
Yeah, I can see that point, especially related to the specification. You want to make sure that you do have a very clear, concise, and understandable specification. So doing that review of the specification and the project requirements, you're going to find some things that might be a little unclear, some things that might, to your point, that might be incorrect. And that's the time you want to address it, not during the project when it's in full swing. When it comes to standards, and James, I'm going to turn to you. When it comes to industry standards, how important is it to clearly lay out exactly what standards might be required in a project, and then also to the understanding of those standards as well?
Very important, especially at the pre-job conference, to address some of those issues, including what method of which standard will be used for testing, what the acceptable levels are if they weren't outlined clearly in the specification or the product data sheet, coming to an agreement on the methods that might be used by the contractor to achieve those results, and maybe a discussion on where efficiencies might be had, or problems that we might see that might come up later, for one reason or another, just based on what we've reviewed in the specification and um, the testing that we're required to do.
And then another follow-up question I have for you, James, is related to with owners. Do you have owners from time to time that will require you to kind of submit? Maybe they have their contractors put in a work plan. Are you also submitting in, kind of based on reviewing a work plan, an inspection plan?
For our QP5 projects, the DoD typically requires that there is a inspection test plan and a coating work plan submitted, and that the PCS does third-party review of the coatings work plan, and works that out with the contractor ahead of time and signs off on it before even the meetings are set up.
Okay, and this next question I have for you could be Sam and Bruno. I think you both could probably answer this. Is how important when it comes to the inspector or the third party who are going to be doing the quality assurance, how important is it to have a relationship with that as a contractor, with that third party?
Bruno, you want to go first?
You can go first.
So in my experience, I mean, I've run a couple shops where dealing with ITPs and inspection plans, third-party inspectors, was a daily thing. And every time that they came in, the first thing that I would do is I would sit down and I'd say, look, if at any point in time you have any questions or concerns, before you do anything, just come to me and let's, have a conversation and let's talk about it. There are plenty of times where these ITPs and these specifications are written for projects and they sound all good, but when it comes down to it, it's impossible to execute as planned. And so I've always leaned on inspectors, especially the good ones, because the good ones want to see a successful project without any hiccups either. So being able to lean on them and say, hey, if you have any ideas, feel free to interject. And I found that by doing so, they just relax a little bit, understand that we're trying to do everything we can at every organization that I'm a part of. We're going to do everything that we can to put out the best product possible. We're not going to cut out any corners, but there will be times where we need to talk about the gray area. And for anyone who's been in inspection business for long enough, you'll understand it's not black and white. There's a ton of gray in our business, and we just have to put that gray out there, and we have to come to an agreement and make sure that everybody signs off on it, and then we can move forward.
The main problem I see, I've done many inspections in roofers before through the manufacturer side. It's sometimes you have to deal with consultants, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of good guys that have a lot of experience in the industry, but a lot of times, they pull up things that doesn't even make sense for a roofing contractor to do, and just because they book smart, that doesn't mean everything they say, or because they get certified by, institutions like IBEC. You know, they have all the knowledge that it's need. Because I know many times, that we had arguments with consultants because what they were asking us to do, it was wasting time for the building owner, for the roofing contractors, and sometimes it was things that it was almost impossible to do. So relationship is very important, like we all agree, but common sense too is very important too.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at a contractor, you're having that relationship in the project, is that me looking, if I'm going to say as an owner, or even if I'm doing the specification or anything like that, contractors really know what they're doing. They have best practice. They know what they're doing, and you really want to lean on that. The thing that I always am concerned with is sometimes you'll specifications sometimes that are a little bit too prescriptive, and really what you want to do is you want to just have it set. This is the parameters, and let that contractor be able to come and say, this is how we're going to tackle this work. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. And then having that inspection plan, like James was talking about, I think that's really critical because now everybody understands how the process is going to flow. And then also when you look at that, you can determine where there might be any type of issues that could come up and be able to deal with them so that it flows a lot better. And like I say, a lot of times there's the perfect project and then there's the real world, and we live in the real world, so things can happen, things can really become a challenge. The other thing too, and I don't know if any of you have any type of experience with this, we're going to be talking about communication plan, and part of that pre-job plan that we talked about, that pre-job meeting, is that everybody understands exactly. Oh, here we go. Susanna, I'm going to bring you up here. All right, Susanna, you're on. You can unmute yourself and
Yeah.
talk.
Can
There
you
go.
hear me?
Go for it.
Okay. I really appreciate what you said about sometimes the architect and the spec driver, the GC often is the one that's kind of adhering to the letter of the law. And that can go both ways. It can also be a safeguard, against contractors who know they can't meet those standards. So that was just my comment. Like, I've seen that go both ways, where it's so stringent, and God bless the people that are trying to find that balance. But there's got to be that balance between where it's so stringent that all the contractors are scared, and then the ones that really are not going to do a good job know this is not worth their time, and to move on. So, I appreciate the discussion, and I admire that, people that are trying to figure that out, because it is a fine line to walk. And I've been on both sides of it. I've been, I learned, I jumped in the deep end. So I worked way back in the beginning with contractors who had no business bidding on the intensity of the spec work they were doing. And it was that amount, the volume, the detail that scared them away and, protected that client. And I've also been on the other side where you had an architectural firm or a spec driver or an engineer or a GC who lost a really good roofer because they had a brand new AutoCAD graduate. That just made life hard for them. So that was just my comment. But I think, err on the side of caution for sure.
Well, and what you just brought up there, you talked about with the AutoCAD, the question I have for, Sam, James, and Bruno too, have you had experience where you've had, again, in a project, everyone has clearly defined roles. This is what your role is. Have you ever had anybody overstep their role and take a different role? In other words, now all of a sudden they're adding into a specification or a job requirement something that was never really there. Have you guys ever encountered anything like that where people would overstep what their role is in the project and kind of throw a wrench into things?
I personally have.
Yeah, it's a very easy thing, especially for an inspector to fall into if they're not being a partner the way they should be.
Exactly. If you don't take all the measurements, all that kind of stuff, I seen people before that they bid on a job and they didn't even do a core cut. Next thing the roof has 4 layers and they losing a lot of money because they just, oh, this is how much it's gonna cost, not thinking about the details and not even know what is underneath that roof. So it's kind of crazy. And I've seen also uh, roofing contractors, that the reality is this. A lot of people don't want to hear that, but it's true. 80% of our industry, the workforce, I mean, 75%, at least in the roofing, they all big companies. They don't have employees anymore, so they sub out their jobs. All right, so all they do is they get a contractor. Hey, a contractor go and get a subcontractor. Hey, use my shirt. You work for my company now. No one will know. But that guy don't have the experience, necessary. You might have 20 years in the roofing, but that crew that you just hired as a subcontractor and the building owner doesn't know because he's using your shirt, represent your company, and no one knows about it. I got a problem with that. They sub out for a crew that I knew. So okay, subcontract is fine. The guy had experience in roofing, done a lot of coating jobs in the past. The next thing you know, a week later, they changed that crew. I don't know what happened, and I got to find out the guy never even done a roof before in his entire life. He was a painter, and that was that upset me because they had a problem. There's nothing wrong again about a person being a painter or whatever it is, but at least to have that communication that you call and say, "Hey, listen, we had a problem with the first crew. We changed to this crew. Come over here. You work for the manufacturer. Training. Are you able to train them on the job site so they can do the job the way it's supposed to?" But they called me when there was a weather problem, and there was almost what 300 square 300 square, which is 3,000 square feet, of job that was already done incorrectly because they did not communicate with us of the change.
Yeah. The other thing too that I want to we talked about with roles and having that clearly defined. We do agree that there is sometimes people kind of overstepping that role when it comes into projects, and that can be a challenge. The thing that I think needs to be really focused on is going to be that more of that formal communication plan, so that there is a process in place when it comes to communicating changes, adjustments, problems, issues, whatever it might be. And a lot of times with a communication breakdown, if there is a communication breakdown, it's going to cause problems with the project. James, you talked about the inspection plan. When it comes to a communication plan, especially between the inspector and the contractor, what are some elements that you look at or you look to incorporate to have that adequate and proper and effective communication plan between you as a inspection and then also to working with, say, if you're working with Sam as a contractor?
To know the right lines of communication and who exactly reports to who and how that structure works. We, as an inspector, we kind of sit in the middle ground. We want to get the owner everything that he's paying for, but we also need to be a partner and manage expectations on both sides, and help the project across the finish line in the best way possible. Sometimes that's taking a painter who's doing a roofing job and helping him to see where he's falling short, or talking with the owner and saying, "Hey, you obviously got a good deal for this. This is kind of the skill level we're seeing here. I think you can be successful, but you know this might take longer than you expected. and things like that, just to kind of manage the overall expectations of the project on both sides and not be a hindrance in any way. You know, if they're coming up on something or about to do something wrong, try to talk to the right people in the right order, so that you're not making waves, but you're addressing the issues to get the best project at the end of the day.
Very good. Sam, anything you want to add to that?
I think the number one thing to remember is just mutual respect and common courtesy and decency. I once worked for a company who wouldn't allow inspectors to come into the main office. They pretty much barred them to their trucks and made them use the porta cans. And when I got there and I learned all this, we took one of the offices and put a nice desk in there, and there was a coffee machine, and opened it up for inspectors and gave them the Wi-Fi password and just made them part of the team. And all of a sudden you start breaking down these barriers where it's a team effort, and at the end of the day everybody has a role, and if everybody does their role and executes their job with integrity, then we're going to have a successful project. And there will be hiccups. And in Texas, in the middle of August, when you're trying to coat a bunch of pipe, yeah, tempers can flare because it's hot as hell outside. And people are going to make mistakes, and you have to own your mistakes. But at the end of the day, if you can have the ability to sit down and have a respectable conversation with somebody, a respectful conversation rather, then you can be successful.
And then also too, Brunno, is there anything related to you on the roofing side when it comes to, that type of what Sam and James talked about? Is there anything from the roofing side that you would want to add?
The same thing. I agree with James and Sam. Communication and respect is the key to to win everything. Relationships, win a project. Get things done right. If you don't have the communication, and I understand that everyone have a bad day, and like James say, mistakes. No one's perfect. People do mistakes all the time. I do mistakes all the time. But by the end of the day, you catch the mistake and you correct those mistakes. You good. It's just another day, another dollar, and that's it.
Anyone in the audience, if you do want to come up, and we got about 5 minutes left roughly, if you want to ask any questions or be part of the conversation, just raise your hand. Here we go. Lucas, I'm going to open up your mic and bring you up. And Lucas, your mic is open. Go.
Yes, sir. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hey, my name is Lucas Bennett. I'm an A3. That's at least so what I refer to myself as. I've been in the coating industry since 2001, been an inspector since 2007. I believe I've worked with Sam before, if I'm not
That's true.
mistaken.
Yeah,
Did
that's me.
where were you at? Were we doing fireproofing?
I was at a pipe company. I won't say the name.
Oh, okay. Understood. But just going back to what everybody's been saying and whatnot, the one thing that I try to stress to people is that I've gotten thrown in so many positions to where a job's kicking off in 2 days and I'm going to be an inspector on that job. And I wasn't involved in the pre-job meeting. And you've got, the engineers, the project managers, all these other people, the contractor involved in the pre-job meeting, but half the time the inspectors aren't there. And every time I have been involved in a pre-job meeting, I've definitely found points that we needed to address. So I think like one really good thing is to make sure that every portion of everybody who's running something or whatnot is at the pre-job and has the ability to speak up, question things. Also, going back to the specs and ITPs, I do understand. I believe it was Sam that said that like there's always a gray area. And what we do is we search out that gray area to try to make it as black and white as we can. And that
That's
makes
exactly right.
that makes it that allows us as inspectors to be able to do our job properly.
Very good, Lucas. In closing, anything else that you wanted to add before we kind of wrap up this broadcast? I'm going to go everybody around the horn here and have
Not myself,
everybody
sir.
give
Thank you,
final
guys.
thought. All right. Thank you. So let's go
Thank you
ahead.
for putting this on, James.
Oh, no problem. No problem. But let's go ahead. Sam, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to leave for everyone?
Not necessarily. I think it's important for contractors to always remember that there's always something to learn and there's always something that can be taught. And so as we move forward in this business and as we move forward in more and more projects, we've got a younger generation of inspectors, engineers, and owners, representatives that maybe don't have as much experience in the field as we do, having so many years in the business. And it's important to show them respect, but hey, it's not a bad thing to mentor someone, even if they are there doing their project, helping them out and passing the torch on to the next generation.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. James, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think for sure inspectors are usually the easy ones to hold up as the ones that are stirring it up, and I'm not saying that there aren't some inspectors who step outside of their zone, but we as consultants we should be the glue that covers everybody up, right? We're just checking the boxes and making sure the documentation's in order and communicating with both sides to help the project end in the best way it can. A lot of times we end up with whatever happens, as Lucas said. Hey, we need an inspector there tomorrow. Don't worry about anything until you get there. But the more we're involved, the more effective we can be at setting up the lines of communication and addressing things up front and heading those things off so everything's documented appropriately.
So true, so true. Brunno Batista, saved you for last again, my friend.
Well, remember prior to us to be live, I was talking about the concern I have that, at least in the roofing industry, coatings it became the biggest segment, the growing segment in our industry. There's a lot of manufacturer, big manufacturer, they are buying specific coatings manufacturers, and now what they're doing is that they hire, the new generation, that which is there's nothing wrong with that. Just like Sam say, you know, mentor them, and teach them. But I seen a level crazy that there's not much mentorship, right? Not much training, and now everyone now is an expert. The other day, as I mentioned to you guys, I won't mention names. I had an argument with the guy, and about coatings, and he was saying something wrong, and I'm like, I look at his profile, because that's the first thing, I don't know that person, so you look at the LinkedIn profile and see it, and the guy didn't even have like a year in our industry, in my industry, and maybe he knows something that I don't know, but what he was saying, it was wrong. So I'm afraid that you're gonna see a lot of people that that is cutting corners, and is not doing things right. I hear a lot of people, they're not doing like the basic things in the when you apply coatings in the roof. Moisture scan, core cuts, all the kind of stuff necessary to make sure the roof is a candidate for coatings. And then they skipping all those important steps. And all I can see, later on is bunch of lawsuits coming up.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. Suzanne, I'm going to go ahead and open up your mic. Let me bring you up here. And you're on.
I just wanted to say, so Bruno was the one that mentored me in the very beginning, and what he just said about qualifying the roof as a candidate before we coat. I've seen Bruno walk away from a $60,000 commission because the roof was not a candidate to be coated, and everybody every other manufacturer, all the sales guys, they were circling like buzzards. And he said, no, this roof is not a candidate. It's not fair to this customer. So that integrity piece and that education piece, just to kind of follow up on what he said about moisture scan, core cut, make sure that we are teaching that these are important, that the roof is a candidate before we code it. That eliminates 90% of the issues. So I appreciate that he's always held that integrity personally, and then also professionally, that he backs it up. That when he says, this is not a candidate, even if it cost him $60,000, he'll walk away from it rather than burn a business owner and make them pay for it later. So, and James, thank you for having these. I love these podcasts. These are great. I could nerd out to these all night. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your support. You have definitely a great evening, and everyone have a great evening. I appreciate you attending this live chat. As I said, I'll take the recording and I'll put it back out on my channel, get it back out on LinkedIn so you can listen to it again. You can share it, like it, all that kind of good stuff. But make sure, too, that you do subscribe to my newsletter. I'm very close to getting 2,000 subscribers to my LinkedIn newsletter, and that's the Coatings Talk Insight newsletter. If you go to my profile, you'll find the latest issue. You can just open it up and then click subscribe. I appreciate it. I think I'm about 50 people away from 2,000, so I really appreciate that. Yes, sir.
Hey, so Lucas has a question, and we've been having a little conversation off the side there. We actually did a project together at one of my former shops, and so we've been texting back and forth. It ends up being a small world, but I told him he should raise his hand.
Yep, he's on there. Lucas, go ahead. You're on now.
Hey, James, honestly, it wasn't much of a question. I just wanted to say that I really appreciate this conversation. This is the first one of these I've done. And it's nice to hear other people voicing their opinions about the similar things that I think. And keep it going. And I was happy to see Sam here just because I know him and I've worked with him before. And he's a great guy. And thank you to the other James and Brunno and everybody else who's here. Thank you very much.
Excellent, excellent. Well, that's it, everybody. I really appreciate it, and stay tuned. I'll take a look and see what is up next on the next live chat topic-wise, but I was so appreciative to have Sam, James, and Brunno. What a great team to have as guest speakers, and thank you guys so much. Everybody have a good rest of your evening, or a good day, good morning, wherever you're at listening right now, and stay tuned for additional content post. And Sam and I will actually have a live stream to do the third episode in the leadership series. Sam's going to be joining me Monday evening for a LinkedIn live stream, and we're going to be talking about leadership topics. So, Sam, looking forward to Monday.
Yep, likewise. Thanks for having this, James. It's awesome.
All right, everybody, have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.